welcome to the ESPN Eastern Conference Finals conference call. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Mr. Ben Capardo. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining this morning. We're here to discuss the NBA Eastern Conference Finals. ESPN's exclusive coverage of the Eastern Conference Finals will continue with Game 2 on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And on the line today, we have ESPN NBA analyst Jeff Van Gundy and Hall of Famer Dr. Jack Ramsay. Jeff is calling the games on ESPN with Mike Breen, and Dr. Jack is calling for ESPN Radio with Jim Durham. Thanks, guys, for joining us, and we'll get right into questions, starting with Josh Robbins from the Orlando Sentinel, followed by Brian Mahoney with the Associated Press. Go ahead, Josh. Josh, still there? All right, let's go to Brian Mahoney with the Associated Press.
Hi, Ms. Mahoney, your line is live.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, great. Hey, actually, Jeff, you have a lot of solutions how to fix things around the NBA. Is the lottery okay? And I'll before you guys come on tomorrow. If Charlotte doesn't get the number one pick, is that all right, or do they have to find a way to make sure teams who need the help as bad as they do get more of it?
Well, not only do I think it's all right, I don't think they should be given any extra odds to get the pick for being bad. To get bad in this league is easy. To get good is hard. And I think to consistently reward teams that are bad with higher picks is not right. And I think what it's doing right now in the regular season is you're watching teams now tank, which is another way of saying not trying their hardest to win as organizations for whole seasons. And it's unfair to the fan bases. And so there has to be something done to incentivize these teams to try their best. And one of the ways is to remove the odds of getting the top pick or a top 4 pick and level it off. And I think even the teams that don't have home court in the playoffs, seeds 5 through 8, should be involved in the lottery as well, because why should they be penalized for winning with no chance of helping themselves out of what's usually in those seeds is they're stuck in a batch of pretty good but not great teams.
Dr. Jack, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I agree with Jeff in that you don't want to see teams tank games, but the draft is to help the lesser teams get better. And if the league can come up with some way of demanding that teams play as well as they can, and then whoever is the worst team, I'd like to see the worst team have the best chance of adding quality to its roster. But Jeff is right on about teams wanting to help themselves be the worst record team. I think that's the issue that has to be cleaned up somehow.
All right. Thank you. Let's go to Gary Washburn with the Boston Globe, followed by Hal Habib with the Palm Beach Post.
Hi, Jeff. I wanted to know what you thought about the Celtics after this year. They have a lot of money to spend with salaries coming off the books, but there is no real marketable free agent out there after Darren Williams, who obviously wouldn't come to Boston likely. They already have Rondo. Is it inconceivable to bring back Garnett and potentially Allen and go at it again? Or do you think they should blow this thing up for the sake of blowing it up?
Well, you made reference to that cliche that you hear often, blowing it up. For what purpose? If it's for the purpose of getting better, either immediately or down the line, then that's great. But some people just say, they never consider that change can be bad for a team, and radical change at that. Listen, to me, if you don't have anybody in free agency that you can target, bringing back Garnett for 1 year at big money makes complete sense, and then go at it again next year to see, where you're at. But just, Boston, people forget, right before they assembled this championship roster with the drafting of Rondo, the trade for Garnett, the trade for Ray Allen, they were a team that lost 18 in a row. And they did it with some young pieces that are okay, Al Jefferson, right? Guys of that ilk. But they lost 18 in a row. It's a painful process to go through. And if you can't envision the road to where you want to get to by, changing a lot, then stay in the course for an extra year, I think, could be a prudent option for Danny Ainge.
I think they need to improve their bench more than they need to improve their starters. Putting Ray Allen aside, because Ray is injured and it's painful to watch him make the effort that he does and come up relatively empty. But I agree with Jeff. Paul Pierce and KG certainly have some games left in them, and Rondo is a key player right now with a lot of years ahead of him. But that's a very thin bench. Reminds me of the Lakers, who have a similar bench. But they need, and they could improve their bench without, as you say, blowing the team up.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Let's go to Al Habib with the Palm Beach Post. And I think Josh Robbins from the Orlando Sentinel has rejoined us. He'll go up next.
Thanks. Jeff, I'd like to ask you a little bit about the transition you've made, from coaching into the broadcasting side of things. Was that something that was always in the back of your mind? And how do you describe your broadcasting style? It seems like you certainly don't mind adding a bit of fun to the broadcast, taking things as seriously as they need to be when the time comes.
Well, I had never thought about broadcasting because I hadn't planned on being fired. So I guess getting fired always sort of opens up your options to what you want to do. As far as style, I don't really have a style. Or at least not planned, other than probably annoying to some. But I just think, I try to say what I see, and try to be as forthcoming as possible.
Thanks.
Thanks, Al. Let's go to Josh Robbins with the Orlando Sentinel, followed by Howard Beck with the New York Times.
This is for Jeff. Jeff, what kind of broadcaster do you think your brother would be if that were a road he'd decide to go down?
Well, Stan is, as you know, having dealt with him, is extremely smart, intelligent, insightful, and does everything with tremendous amount of candor. And I think he has many options. If he wants to coach, I think he can certainly, with the record he's amassed, he'll have multiple opportunities to do that. If he wants to do something outside of basketball, unlike a lot of us, he's smart enough to actually do something outside of basketball. And then if he wants to broadcast, I think he'd be great at that. I think he's one of those guys who can do a lot of things and do them well.
Thanks, Jeff.
Can I just follow up, Jeff? What was the tough transition to the broadcast booth for you?
Well, I think there's a couple. The first is there's no competition. Certainly you don't have to deal with the misery of losing, but there's no, to me, great high that a road win in the playoffs would, can ever give you. Second, you're not in day-to-day touch with a group. The camaraderie, can't be replaced. So I always try to say it's the 3 C's that you miss: the competition, the camaraderie, and the charters. And I'm not sure the charters don't go first. But I think past that, the hardest adjustment is I never realized how sensitive players were. You might say 99%, good things, and if you say one thing that you would like to see been done differently, they get quite angry. I was doing a game where in the playoffs where a player made a basket and he jogged down court. He didn't look directly at me, but I knew he was looking towards me and screamed something out I couldn't share with you for print. But it was just I was amazed because I was like, wow, I've been like I say what I see, but some of it I didn't like in a particular game, and I said that, and I didn't realize how sensitive guys were.
Thanks, Josh. Let's go to Howard Beck with the New York Times, followed by Ed Sherman with the Sherman Report.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, Jack. How are you? Just wondering your observations on what the Heat have, or how they've kind of evolved, if that's even the right word, since Bosh went down, but also since they were down 2-1 to the Pacers. How has this team changed and succeeded, obviously, with Wade and LeBron basically becoming, that much more of the offense since Bosh went down?
Gotcha, Jack. You want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I don't see a huge difference. There's no question that Chris Bosh is a quality player and very helpful to that team. But the Heat's strength is primarily its defense, and that has been maintained. Ronnie Turioff and Joel Anthony are certainly not Chris Bosh, but the game plan at the defensive end has not changed, and the Heat is getting big margin out of their team defense. They take teams right out of it. Last night's game, I think, was kind of typical. They keep the Celtics under 40%. They score 79. They get walloped on the board, 48-33 does Boston. And they focus on key guys. Paul Pierce, 5 for 18. That's no mistake. He's having a hard time just catching the ball. Rajon Rondo teams target to keep him from creating in the basket area, and they're doing a good job. Philly did a good job against both of those guys, which is why it got to be a 7-game series. But the Heat will be tough until Chris Bosh gets back because of their defense and the fact that Wade and James really upgrade their offensive games. And everybody else chips in. In last night's game, they got a big boost from Mike Miller off the bench knocking down threes. Battier knocked down a couple of threes. Battier was very good last night. Not always, but very good. 10 points, 10 rebounds, and a couple of threes, and his usual sticky defense. But they're a very good defensive team, and that's not going to change whether it includes Chris Bosh or not.
Jeff, you have the same interpretation there, or has anything changed in the way they play on the offensive end as well?
Well, again, what I think is interesting to me is everybody was lamenting Bosh's absence in Game 2. That's why they lost. Game 3 at Indiana, that's why they lost. Game 4, they're down 9 at half, and Wade is in a struggle still at 1 for 8. And everybody is talking about Bosh. now it's come full circle, or now some people are saying, oh, now they're better without Bosh because James and Wade are getting more opportunities to attack. And so what you learn very quickly in coaching is everybody's perception is based on the results. A week ago, when they were in a struggle, it was that they didn't have enough to win without Bosh. Now it's gone full circle that they're better without Bosh. The answer lies, as Jack said, in between. They're always going to be a great defensive team. And what I think was Miami's finest hour so far in these playoffs were down 2-1, down 9.5, Wade in a struggle. LeBron James put together a first half in Indiana in Game 4 that kept them within striking distance. And then Wade played tremendous from there on out, as did James. They held together when they could have broken apart. I give a lot of credit to Eric Spoelstra for that. He held the rope. There was no give-in by their team. And from that point on, they played just outstanding basketball.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Howard. Let's go to Ed Sherman with the Sherman Report, followed by Dan Bickley with the Arizona Republic.
Hey, Jeff, and this might be a little bit out there, but can you imagine any scenario in which you would work with your brother in a broadcast situation, and what do you think that would be like?
Well, I think certainly if he wanted to get into broadcasting, like I said, I think he would be great at it. I have no idea what he's interested in doing. I think the most important thing, having been fired myself before, it's painful, and you have to go through the process of grieving the job loss and not rushing into something, and you just take your time, and he'll have so many opportunities. He'll pick the one that best serves he and his family. So if he would like to broadcast, like I said, I think he'd be terrific, and working with him would be fun because I don't get to see him that much because he's always busy with his job, and we don't live in the same city. And he would probably verbally assault me like he has for my whole life if we ever did it together.
But I regard Stan as one of the top coaches in the league. He's done a magnificent job at Orlando, has not received the credit that he should have. That's another team without a great roster. And Stan has put together winning seasons to every season he's been there. And if he wants to coach, he's going to have an opportunity next year.
Jeff, I'm sorry, can I answer a quick question, Jeff? You had some pointed comments about the Magic and Stephen, in an interview with Stephen A. Smith. And having gone through it, knowing your brother is going through it, I mean, did that impact your comments in any way? Is that something you would have said about any coach getting fired?
Well, I think I'll cut to the chase first and then backtrack. Sure, it had an impact. He's my brother, so I feel strongly. I know the situation better, studying it. I know that in the 3 years before Stan came to Orlando, Dwight Howard had never had a winning record, and he had never won a playoff game, and he'd never been the defensive player of the year, and he'd never been an All-NBA player. So I know all those things. And so when he was fired, listen, teams have the right to change coaches. Dr. Jack has been through it. Every coach has been through it, except for the very few lucky ones. But there is a manner in which you go about changing that shows you have a dignity and an integrity about you. And so couple their callous disregard for what Stan had helped them to do, winning more playoff series in his 5 years than they have had in the entire time that they've been a franchise. Add into that, he's my brother. Sure, it impacted my comments, but I didn't overreact. In fact, if anything, I underreacted, because when you see leadership by appeasement, or appeasement as a leadership strategy, I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong for the individual player. I think it's wrong for the team and the franchise, and that's what I said in many different ways.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Ed. Let's go to Dan Bickley with the Arizona Republic, followed by Rick Bonnell with the Charlotte Observer.
Hi, Jeff. This question's for you. A lot of people think LeBron James has gone through more scrutiny from the media and fans than maybe any other athlete in history because of the 24/7 media cycle. From your perspective, what do you think of that?
What do I think of if he has
gone the scrutiny and the standards LeBron James is held to in the 24/7 media cycle?
Right. Well, frankly, I've always been impressed with James because, to me, he has totally stayed out of, with all the scrutiny, he's really stayed out of any trouble. There's no trouble between him and his teammates, him and the law, him and anything. You know, the guy, the two things that people point to are the way he announced where he was going in free agency, which he has come back and said, hey, I should have done it different. And then the way Miami held their celebration, where he probably got overly enthused and, predicted multiple, championships, which he wasn't really in charge of. That was set up by the Miami Heat. So, honestly, I think the guy has done miraculously well. No college, no father figure, or as he's growing up. Some, people talk about the AAU culture. He was a product of that, but he's come through. I mean, I think this guy has done everything. I just think he's withstood it all very, very well. Now, would he have liked to play some games differently? Maybe last year in the finals? Yeah. Tell me an athlete that doesn't have, or coaches that don't have regrets over how they played or certain moves they made in the game. But as far as his standard of behavior, I absolutely applaud how he's conducted himself. I don't know many young people that could come in this league at 18 and withstand all that scrutiny and do it in such a class manner.
And he's the leader of this team. I admire the way when Dwayne Wade was struggling, LeBron personally brought him back into it. Looked for him, got him the ball where he could score, got him layups. That's always a great way for a player that's struggling with his offense to get the offense going. He's a leader on defense. He, in my opinion, was the defensive player of the year. He is the motor behind that very good Heat defense. His weak side defense is incredible. The way he can help from the weak side, come in and stop a lob pass over the top to the opposing team center, and then get back out and cover the corner where his guy's waiting to shoot a three. He's been marvelous.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Let's go to Rick Bonnell with the Charlotte Observer, followed by James Buckland with Pro Basketball Talk.
Jeff, do you believe the Bobcats tanked last season? I'm also curious what you think of Anthony Davis as a pro.
I don't think the team and the coaching staff did. I think the organization did, by not getting as good a roster as they possibly could have for their fans. I actually thought their team, when I watched them play, I thought they played hard. I thought Paul got them to play as hard as they could. But you could make the case that they don't have at any position a top 15 player at their position. So they're not top half of starters at any place on their roster, which is a tough place to be. And that's why a guy like Anthony Davis, if they do draft him, he's going to be expected to turn it around, but there's no quick fixes. They have I think, a very poor roster by design. I think they are trying to do what most people in the front office would agree with how they're doing it. Get bad to try to get good. People have done it before. San Antonio Spurs, I think it was 18 wins when David Robinson was hurt, and they got Tim Duncan. And for 15 years, they've been just phenomenal. So what they're doing, I think, goes to what most people in the NBA would do. But it's by design. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Rick. Let's go to James Buckland with Pro Basketball Talk, followed by Shannon Owens with the Orlando Sentinel.
Hey, gentlemen. When you look at Ray Allen last night, 1 for 7 from the field, 3 from 7 from the free throw line. When you see his struggles and sort of the trend that's been happening with him, do you think that's become more mental or physical, especially when you look at the free throws?
That's physical, and that has become mental. But Ray Allen just can't get open like he once does, and when he does get open, he can't shoot the ball because he's not getting into position to shoot it. He has lost his quickness, his lift on his shot, both of those very important qualities in a player like Ray, who does his best work moving without the ball and coming off screens, getting open to shoot his shot. He can't shoot the ball like he once did. And his free throws, I would agree, I think that's all mental now.
Well, I think, like Jack, I would, concur. But I would just add it. I think it's just a shame because he is the consummate professional who sets quite an example for how you're supposed to go about preparing to play well. And he's continued his diligent preparation, but coupled with, playoff defense being, more, targeting what guys do, and his lack of health right now made it very difficult for him to shoot the ball. Now, I thought he made some good plays off the pass last night. I actually thought he defended Wade well in the first half, but he just, for the Celtics to score enough, he's going to have to shoot the ball better for them to win.
He's a consummate pro. He worked. He was in the beginning of the second half. He was the first guy out of the locker room and onto the floor. Went to the free throw line, shot maybe 15 free throws, and went to the baseline and shot some shots. Now he was able to make them. I watched him shoot. He made a high percentage of shots from the line and along the baseline, but that's not what happens during the game, except from the free throw line. Free throw line is always the same. And as I said earlier, I think he's lost a bit of confidence there.
Yep. And one last question for Jeff. Sports Illustrated asked 124 NBA players to choose their favorite announcer. You ranked at number 2. Do you consider that an honor, or do you wish you got that number 1 spot from Charles Barkley?
Hey, listen, I'm just happy to have a job. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know about all that, but I'm just happy to have a job. And, I don't really get into if people say they like you or dislike you. It's just like in coaching. You just do the best you can and live with the results.
But I think that's what makes you good, Jeff. You do it as you see it, and let the chips fall where they may. I think your straightforward commentary is very good for the game.
Well, thank you, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Jan. Let's go to Shannon Owens with the Orlando Sentinel, followed by Stephen Lieberman with the Culver City Observer.
I'm good. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thanks, Shannon. Steven with the Culver City Observer.
I appreciate that. It's a question about a team that I cover here in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Clippers, if that's okay. I know we're talking about the NBA, the Eastern Conference Finals, but I wanted to get both takes on what the future looks like for the Clippers and how they did this season. And you think that Del Negro is going to be back next year as the head coach?
Go ahead, Jack.
I think Vinny Del Negro has done a good job. He did a good job at Chicago. He's done a very good job with the Clippers. So why not? Why would you not keep him? I think there's always that question when a team loses. First of all, when it doesn't make the playoffs, everybody assumes the coach is gone. Whereas the coach may have done a very good job in getting the maximum from that team. And then when it ultimately loses in the playoffs and everybody but one coach is going to lose in the playoffs, the same thing happens. Should we retain the coach or should we go after somebody better? Who's to determine that? So I think Vinny has done a very good job on that. I like the team. I think they will get better. Chris Paul was certainly not to the extent of Ray Allen's, of course, but he was under 100% by far in the playoffs and for most of the season. Chris Paul is an incredible player. Not only does he create offense, but he's one of the best point guard defenders in the game. People don't realize that. Blake Griffin is going to continue to get better. And the other spots should improve and get better. They need help off the bench, but I think they will get it. This is a tough team. This is a tough team in the making.
Yeah, I would echo Jack's statement. I thought Vinny Del Negro did a great job. I thought their team, with just really one addition in Chris Paul, and then, secondary acquisitions in like the Kenyon Martin, Nick Young, Reggie Evans, gave the Clippers a chance. And that their Game 7 win at Memphis was a terrific win for their organization. They got swept, obviously, by the Spurs, and that's never an easy way to go out. But I think it's all going to be about sustaining their success. Can they keep Chris Paul? If they can, they're going to be good. If they can't, they'll take another downturn. And I think that's exactly what it comes down to.
Thank you.
Thanks. Let's go to Barry Janoff with NYSportsJournalism.com, followed by Peskel with Basket News.
Hey guys, thanks. Appreciate your time. I know it was addressed a little bit last night during the game. Boston gets called for 5 technicals, a couple of them borderline, Doc Rivers saying, at least he should have got more for his money. But, I mean, what do you say about those technicals yesterday, and how do you see that impacting the series moving forward?
I don't think it has any bearing on future games. I think that was very unusual. Kevin Garnett, I don't know what he said that got him a technical, but as he tried to explain, he talks all the time, and a lot of it is not for your living room. And I think Danny Crawford thought that the comments were directed at him, and they weren't. It was just KG with his usual in-game dialogue, or monologue, more to the point.
Yeah, and for me, Danny Crawford, I've always found when he worked, when I was coaching, he's got a great demeanor. Very rarely overreacts. And I think the technical foul on Ray Allen, he'll look at it and say, I missed the call, and then I blew the technical because Ray Allen gave a momentary show of emotion, but that was it. It wasn't overly demonstrative, and it certainly wasn't directed at Danny. and Ray has a history of comportment that is outstanding. So I think, when he looks at that one, I thought the Doc Rivers technical was, there's no defense of it. To be able to say, come on, Eddie, and get a technical foul, to me, the officials, and a lot of them are really good about it. Some need improvement on their ability to understand the intensity and the emotion of these games. And certainly officials aren't competing, so sometimes they can lose sight of the fact that this is hard-fought competition. Some of these guys like Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, Pierce, LeBron James, Wade, this is how they're going to be judged, and as are the coaches. And for them to be quick with the technical instead of a technical of that it's the last course of action. I was thinking to myself during the game, if they had a son or a daughter playing in the game or coaching in the game, would they have wanted their kids if their son was Doc Rivers, coaching, would they have given their kid a technical foul for just that amount, or how would they have felt? And I think a certain level of empathy from the officials goes a long way for these coaches and players who are in this hotly contested environment.
And officials, in the past, officials would be a little more tolerant of comments from the coach and players during the playoffs. They went off a little quickly in last night's game, but I don't think it had any bearing on the outcome.
And also, if I could ask, I know you mentioned your brother Stan. What do you see the coaching landscape next year? Maybe Jerry Sloan coming back, Mike D'Antoni. How do you see it? No, that could be for either of you.
How can I see what?
The coaching landscape next season. You mentioned your brother, but maybe Jerry Sloan coming back, Mike D'Antoni.
Oh, well, there's a lot of great coaches that don't have jobs. You just mentioned, Mike Fratello. You can go on, and there's a lot of very, very accomplished coaches out there, and certainly anybody who has an opening will consider all those people, plus the quality bunch of assistants. There's a lot of great coaches, and I'll tell you what give you the best chance is to make sure you get a Hall of Famer. If you've got a Hall of Famer on your roster, and you can forge a long-term relationship with that guy with enough support as far as player-wise, you can be a really good coach in our league. Without a great player, though, very, very difficult to sustain success.
And I think for the coaches who are out there, don't take a job just because it's a job. Adopt the Phil Jackson attitude to a certain extent. Phil would not take a job unless he thought the team could win a championship. Now, all coaches can't have that high a criterion, but you want to take a job where you have a chance to win. And Jerry Sloan interviewing for the Charlotte job makes no sense to me. He may have done it because of his association with Michael Jordan. I don't know. But Jerry is too good a coach to take a job at that level.
Thank you. Good luck on the rest of the series.
Thanks.
Thanks, Barry. Let's go to Pesco with the basket news, and then we will conclude with Ian Begley from ESPN New York.
Hello, this is a question for both of you coaches. We have seen an emphasis on defense in the past few years in the NBA. But what do you think of of how the game is evolving on offense? It doesn't seem that it's catching up as much as it is on defense.
I could not hear you really that well. Could you repeat that?
Sorry, I said we have seen an emphasis on defense in the NBA the past few years. But what do you think of how the game is evolving on offense in the past few years?
I think the game offensively has evolved into a perimeter pick and roll game offensively. Teams don't run a lot of different actions or continuity, or the post-up game is not nearly as emphasized. And so I think the Mike D'Antoni influence in Phoenix with getting into quick hitting pick and rolls has become the norm. I think San Antonio shows you that in how they play the game. So many pick and rolls for Parker, so many pick and rolls for Ginobili, and then surround those pick and roll players with a good roll man to the rim and a lot of shooting at the 3-point line. It really stretches your defense and makes it a challenge.
And the ability of your point guard to get into the paint in transition, or sometimes just spreading the floor and letting him go to work. I don't know how many years ago when Cotton Fitzsimmons had Kevin Johnson, he was the first to employ that kind of an offense. And his offense really was spread the floor, like KJ, penetrate, and create a play, which he did very well. Westbrook does that very well for OKC, although he came up a little short in Game 1 against the Spurs.
But thank you. But if we compare to how the game used to be played in the 80s and the 90s, do you like what you see right now, and do you think some change of rules must be done?
Myself, I think we don't really need a lot of different rule changes. I think coaches construct offenses to take advantage of the strengths of their players, and there just aren't a lot of post-up players anymore. The rules make it harder for post-up players now with the restrictions on the illegal defenses, and so the pick-and-roll game is very hard to defend, particularly when you surround it with a shooting that a San Antonio surrounds their pick-and-roll players with.
There is some talk about allowing the international rule where players can go after the ball once it hits the rim, and either player, offense or defense, could do it. I would not like to see that in the NBA. I think it's good to have the rule as it is, and if you touch the ball on or over the rim, if it's the defender, the goal is good. If it's the offensive player, it's basket interference.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, Pascal, and we'll wrap up with Ian Begley from ESPN New York.
Hey, guys, first off, I appreciate your time. I know we're talking Eastern Conference Finals here, but I was hoping I could sneak in a question on a team that I've dealt with all year. I have a two-parter here. First off, for both Jeff and Jack, what did you think of the Knicks' decision to extend Mike Woodson, and also their decision not to reach out to any other candidates? And the second part is for Jeff. Larry Brown said the other day that he thought, despite everything that went on with him in New York, that James Dolan should be commended because he's committed to winning. I just wanted to know if you had the same opinion on that.
Well, yeah. My dealings with Mr. Dolan when he was the owner were a little bit more maybe infrequent because Dave Checketts was in place, and he was, my dealings were with Dave, and Dave dealings with Mr. Dolan, and I dealt with Mr. Dolan a lot. But the one thing, when you're coaching the New York Knicks with Mr. Dolan in charge, there was no doubt he wanted to win, and there was no doubt he would give you the resources to win. And I had absolutely no problem with owner. I mean, he was a very good owner to me, and I applaud his and their decision to bring Mike Woodson back. I think it's well-deserved opportunity for Mike. I think Mike did a fantastic job in Atlanta, and I think he did a terrific job taking over in New York. And I thought Mike D'Antoni did a very good job as well. He just was dealing with. He just had to deal with incredible roster turnover in his time there. So, Mr. Dolan has done. He's an owner that any coach would want to work for, as far as inputting the resources in to try to win. Because as a coach, all you want to do is have a chance to win and win big, as Jack said, win championships, and there's no doubt that he gives you that opportunity.
And I agree about Mike Woodson. Mike Woodson did a terrific job taking over a team, which is always difficult during the season. The team had, as we all know, a series of injuries. It had roster changes. He incorporated that team, brought it together, improved its team defense markedly, got a competitive team going, gave Lynn a chance, and that paid big dividends. So it was very well-deserved rehire, in my opinion.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Ian. I want to thank Jeff and Dr. Jack for joining us today. Enjoy the Eastern Conference Finals on ESPN and ESPN Radio. There will be a transcript of the call distributed to media this afternoon. Thanks for all the media members who joined, and we'll see you back for an NBA Finals conference call. Thanks, everybody.